Now, let's jump into the consumer perspective. In VCF automation, I'm showing the namespace that we have used before. So we have deployed some clusters there, some virtual machines. That's why we see all of these objects. But what we are going to do now is we're going to create a brand new namespace that will hold these new resources that we are deploying. So I'm just showing the kind of process you would take from the VCFA portal, giving the namespace a name. Namespaces here are based on namespace classes, which basically define the sizing, which VM classes are attached to it, which storage classes, content libraries, and stuff like that. Select the region this is deployed in, the VPCs, and just have that namespace created. Now, what I can do is when I'm in my original kind of like namespace, vSphere namespace context, as a consumer, because everything, again, we're deploying all of the new services, all part of the same ecosystem, I could just explain, the CRD and how that works. So what I can see here is that I do have a new kind of Argo CD, and it also gives me a description of the version that is supported. So I can get this kind of information without, again, having to go anywhere else or ask anyone else. I can do it myself. And then all I have to do is deploy an Argo instance. Very simple configuration. All you are basically defining is a name and a version that you wish to deploy. And then I'm just going to check that all those pods are deployed. And once that's the case, I need to get, first of all, a service to get the external IP that I can use to connect to the CD instance. And then the default configuration creates an admin user, which has a password that is stored in a secret. So I'm just going to grab that out of there. And with this information that I have and the IP, I could just, open this. I can log in with this user and the password. And I can see my instance is there. Marketing is obviously in there, but I can start using it. You can do all your things through the UI. I also want to show you the kind of the CLI experience that you get. So I'm just going to install that CLI that I grabbed off that support portal and simply install it. Once it's installed, I'm going to again grab that password for the admin user and the IP. And the reason for that is that I can now use this to log in using this CLI. So I'm going to log into the IP and I'll give it that password. And now there's obviously a lot of options you can do with the CLI itself. The first thing I would recommend to do is to change the password to something that you can actually type in and remember. So you can update the admin password to, again, memorable. And then what I can do is I can add my supervisor as a destination, and I can add namespaces which I select. So it's not adding everything. I can kind of control what is added. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding the namespace where I've already deployed all of my stuff before, but I'm also adding that new test namespace that we have created. So I'm just going to add that, and this will allow me to use this as a destination for any deployments. And now, very simply, to show the principle of this, I have a GitHub repo. I'm just going to grab the files that I have downloaded in those previous demos and just upload them all in a repo. So without doing anything to them, just took them, uploaded them, again, depending on what you are deploying, if there's anything that's specific to a namespace. I grab the URL and now I can deploy an application. Again, in these demos, I'm just trying to show different ways of working with the tools. You could do all of this in the CLI if you prefer to. You can store your application creations as YAML in Git as well. So just showing kind of like, so I can guide you through how you would create something like an Argo CD app, especially if you haven't seen the tool before. So really simply here, we're giving the application within Argo a name, selecting how it should sync, some configuration. And then as a source, we are adding that repo we had there, path I put everything in root, so I'm just selecting root. And now for destination, so this is where it goes. I'm selecting the supervisor and the namespace that I have added. And this is just if I would have something in subfolders. That's just good practice for my application. Anyway, create this, and we will see that this is our demo app that was created. And when we go in here, as it will start syncing, we will see how it's starting to build up all of the resources that are part of everything I included in that repository. So it's deploying the CLI VM, it's deploying the VKS cluster, it's doing all of that configuration that we have done before. So again, obviously here I'm showing the deployment, the initial kind of deployment of the application, but keeping in mind that this is continuous delivery. So now if I wanted to maybe add additional port on the load balancer, I would go to my GitHub repo, I would commit a change to that load balancer configuration file, and this would make sure that change gets matched and distributed. And in the inventory, just showing that all of those resources were nicely deployed for us. So everything worked as expected.